So this just dropped major worldwide news, and no one's really talking about it because everyone in media, just like they were years ago, is against Trump. No one wants to tell him thank you. No one wants to be appreciative of the work he's doing and the things he's accomplishing. So what they're doing is not sharing ours and his accomplishments with the world. What Trump is doing is for the betterment of the United States and of the people. I know that there's a disconnect because my pro Trump videos on TikTok, hundreds of thousands of views, tens of thousands of comments on some of these videos, people who you would think were not even Trump, everyone. When I tell you so many people appreciate and love our president because we're seeing the results, and now we're understanding the manipulation because, well, the television is telling me one thing, but the news I'm getting from journalists like Rico Limbaugh is telling me something else, but Rico's actually showing me the difference. What Trump just did today, it just broke today, is amazing. Melanie King, she did a good breakdown. We're going to watch her video. Yes, okay, yes, she's real pretty and all that. But no, but she actually does a really good breakdown. I want to say this. The UN, like NATO, is over. See, the UN and NATO were both scams the entire time. They never actually did anything. What they both did was they begged for money, and the United States was always the biggest contributor, but yet everyone has damn near equal say so. Yeah, you can do an override on certain people and vetoes, but for the most part, everyone kind of had a say. We were paying everyone's bills. But for what? Well, that's the reason why they needed a boogeyman this entire time to scare all these different nations into giving away a piece of their residents' tax base to these organizations. Turns out it was always just a scam by the World Economic Forum, and that's why they always could never include the Russians, because NATO, like the UN, they pretend that the Russians are the bad guys, and your money is needed to keep the Russians from taking over basically the rest of the world, which is why there's 30 odd countries in NATO and there's only one Russia. This is amazing. Trump created something to replace the UN. And guess what? Because we created it under Trump, the money comes to us and we have full control or say so. But see, unlike the UN and NATO, we can actually make peace. That's why it's called the Board of Peace. We don't need a boogeyman to scare you out of your money. That's a scam. Trump doesn't do scams. He does business. We're bringing in the Russians who have already signed up to join the Board of Peace. So what does that mean? You can't use the Russians as a boogeyman anymore. And now the Russians can do business. That's all the Russian people have been begging for all these years since they got rid of the Soviets. They just wanted to do business in the market. They don't want to go to war. They don't want to fight. But so many countries and their leaders have literally used the Russians as their scapegoat and their excuse to drain their coffers of their economies and drain their tax base in different countries around the world. They've literally been robbing people blind in their own countries, and they use the Russians as an excuse to do it. They never wanted peace. They need the threat of war to keep taking your money. Trump just destroyed it. And look, just now, the UN has issued a letter to 193 of its other members stating that they're going to be facing an imminent collapse because Donald Trump cut the U.S. funding for the UN. So if Trump's pulling us out of NATO and he's pulling us out of the UN, where are they going to get all their money from? The only other person that was giving the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization a bunch of money besides the United States was Bill Gates. Well, we have RFK Jr. now and all that whole, the whole depopulation thing. A lot of that stuff's on hold. Yeah, a lot of people are dying, but not as many as could have been dead had the World Economic Forum and the Davos group and Fauci and Gates had got their wishes. Way more of us will be gone by now. We're going to lose a lot of people, but we can recover. So let's go ahead to Melanie. I want you guys to hear her reporting as she breaks this down. This is major worldwide news, and no one is talking about it besides us. Let's take a listen.
Well, this is wild, guys. So the UN has issued a letter to its 193 member states warning that they face imminent.
Somebody in my chat says she's not wearing a ring, so she's not married. Okay, thank you. Thank you guys. I appreciate that. Let's talk about geopolitics for right now. We'll get back to how good she looks in marriage later, but for now, geopolitics, okay? Russia, Putin, Davos. Let's focus on destroying the corrupt, nonsensical, and now redundant UN. We have the board of peace. We got to focus, okay, guys? Come on.
Financial collapse after Donald Trump cut US funding. Guys, this is all over the place. It's not being paid attention to as much. We know that happens, but let me show you a little bit about this. Okay, so this is one of the articles, and it says the United Nations is at risk of imminent financial collapse due to member states not paying their fees, the body's head has warned. Now, keep in mind, Trump just formed his board of peace. All right. And there's $1 billion buy-in for countries or members to be part of it.
So why would we give money to the UN when we just started the board of peace where people got to give money to us to get in? And guess who was the number one first person that wanted to give us $1 billion? They couldn't give us their money fast enough because they want peace and they want to do business and they don't want to keep going to war. Guess who was the first one? Vladimir Putin, the Russians. They want peace. They want to do business. The problem is there's so much money in scamming people by using Putin as a boogeyman. I'll be honest. If we get rid of Putin as a boogeyman, there's no more Middle Eastern, there's no more bin Laden, and no one's worried about the Chinese. They're going to have to come up with some fake aliens for everybody to be afraid of, or that might be the end of the World Economic Forum, and maybe we can, that'll give us one step closer to freedom as humanity. The next step was going to be once we get rid of the Federal Reserve, but we'll talk about that later.
So far, and I'll show you in a second, the majority of the countries that have joined are Muslim. And many of the ones in Europe haven't, and specifically citing that it could compete with the UN. And now we're seeing the play, we're seeing the power moves that the US is not supporting it anymore, not paying their dues.
What she said is huge. Okay, think about it. Besides the Russian, who else has been the boogeyman all these years that they've been scaring you with all the movies so that they can take money from your tax dollars and basically give it to all these black budgets when it comes to the what do you call it, military industrial complex and all these agencies? Well, if it wasn't the Russians they wanted you to be afraid of, they wanted you to be afraid of who? Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden, Gaddafi. What do they all have in common? Muslims. So these Muslim countries that literally mean us no harm, they don't like Israel. That has nothing to do with the United States. We're not Israelis. I'm not. I'm America first, not Israel first. So that's the boogeymen. The boogeymen have always been kept out of the UN for the most part, or kept like far away. But the Europeans are mad because this is how they siphon money from their people. But also but also Europe is controlled by the World Economic Forum, same as Canada. So the World Economic Forum gets their money and their power from controlling the European nations and the United States. They're losing their control. So the Europeans who want to see the wars continue are upset. The Muslim countries, Russia, they're happy. This might finally bring peace. And if we have a board of peace, Israel is not going to attack anyone on that board because, well, then now the Americans are going to have to get involved. There is no more, you can just do whatever you want and you can claim the Holocaust gives you justification for whatever. That's over. We've just literally collapsed the global structure and we reset it in our favor. And when I say ours, I mean we reset it in the favor of the American government and the American people. We are no longer going to be subsidiaries or controlled by these European and World Economic Forum goons. That's over.
Other countries aren't, but they are giving $1 billion to the Board of Peace, which we have told you that in end times prophecy, I believe that represents the 10 kings, what is going to be coming out of that. We've got to break it down. We're still waiting to see what finishes up with that. We also need to be looking at Iran, which I don't know if will join the board of, not the board of peace, possibly, but they're not part of the Abraham Accords. But if you don't know, there's something called the Cyrus Accords, which right before tribulation, Iran and Israel make peace, and that is what the exiled crown prince, if the regime in Iran was to be turned over, so they want to put him into place. And he said that one of the first things he wants to do is make peace with Israel, and that is through the Cyrus Accords.
Peace is not good for money. War is good for money. When you want to launder money, when you want to steal money, when you want to siphon money and just suck it dry out of a country, you need war. You need people to be afraid. People aren't afraid of peace. People are comfortable with peace. They're happy with peace. You got to keep people in fear. These people in Europe have kept control over most of the world out of fear by pretending that they were the only thing stopping the Muslim world and the Russians from coming in and just nuking everybody. When these countries and these people have literally no intentions of doing any harm, they all understand we're all trapped on the same ball. Well, we're not on a ball, but they're all trapped. We're all trapped in the same world here, right? There is nowhere else to go. They don't want to destroy themselves. They have families. They have children. They want to do business, but they don't want to be always used as a scapegoat. They're demonized. Even in our Call of Duty and our video games, you're only allowed to kill Russians or Muslims now. That's it. That's it. Or sometimes Chinese, but that's it. These people want to be a part of the global community. They want to do business, but they want to maintain their sovereignty. Why do they have to get rid of their currency and do the euro? I like using the French. I like using the Deutschmark. I like using the pound. Well, why do we have to give up our currency? Why do we all have to speak the same language? We can learn other languages and all, but we don't need to give up who we are as our people and erase our culture just because we want to do business. You should not need to invade my country for us to do business. I don't want that shouldn't be mandatory. And I think with the Board of Peace, now our countries will be able to maintain their sovereignty. Trump said at a UN a couple of years ago that the United States will remain in the hands of patriots, and we will not bow down to the doom and gloom predictions of the globalists. Our country will remain in the hands of people who are nationalists and patriots. And that's what other countries should do as well. They should keep their identity, but also be allowed to do business. And with the Board of Peace, the way it's going to work with Trump, they will be able to do that. No more of this UN BS that's good for nothing. When there's a war breaking out every year, ever since the invention of the UN, what is that, 1963, 64? There's never been any peace. The UN has done zero good, but they're asking for money and nobody pays for the most part except the United States. But we're supposed to protect everybody from the Russians. Well, now what? The Russians are our partners. Ideologically concerned, we have more in common with the Russians than the Europeans. Way more in common. The Russians are an actual good ally. They got energy, they have infrastructure, they have a military. The rest of these people are all dependents. Children who talk back to us, but we feed them. The disrespect has to stop. No more is going to be tolerated by the US, and that's why we had to go around the UN and make another better version of the UN, and we're going to just shut down the UN. It's over, destroyed, kaput. There is no more UN. It's done.
That is very important. So it says Antonio Guterres said the UN faced a financial crisis which was deepening, threatening program delivery, and that money could run out by July. He wrote in a letter to all 193 member states that they had to honor their mandatory payments or overhaul the organization's financial rules to avoid collapse. Even if they were able to avoid it, which I don't think they're going to be able to, because I think the Board of Peace is going to grow stronger and stronger. And then as the UN is collapsing, well, these countries who did not want to join, well, then now they're going to be looking to want to be, with this Board of Peace, most likely. And we've got to look up at that. And that's when that board is going to be forming that new world government. I make it a Wikipedia, but a new world order. They've even been talking about a new world order. And this is what we're seeing forming right now. And I don't care if the UN, like the UN is trash. I have gone down a rabbit hole of the things that they've done. I don't think they do any good in the world. They're just a sick organization. But either way, it says it comes after the UN's largest. Sorry if you heard my tummy growl. I didn't eat yet. It comes after the UN's largest contributor. The U.S. refused to contribute to its regular and peacekeeping budgets and withdrew from several agencies it called a waste of taxpayer dollars. Several other members are in arrears or are simply refusing to pay. Do you think that what? How do you think that ties together? How do you think that ties together with the Board of Peace rising? And not even a week later, when this thing is signed at Davos, the Board of Peace, well, now we get this news that they're in financial collapse. And for him to put this out publicly, meaning they've been working behind the scenes to fix this. But I do believe Donald Trump has strong-armed them behind the scenes. And I believe he cut off the funding to the UN because other nations were saying that they weren't going to join. I think Spain in particular, they weren't going to join. It was a couple of them. They weren't going to join because it would threaten it. So lo and behold, we have now this week, it's going to collapse. I mean, I think that's the goal anyway. But are you not connecting those dots? Are you not seeing the power plays behind the scenes? How this is ushering in us into the end times? What we're seeing all forming, we've never seen anything like this. He said the integrity of the entire system depended on states adhering to their obligation under the UN Charter to pay their assessed contributions.
It's all about money. And you know what? I'll be honest. I hear what she's saying about the end times, but I mean, how many people die per day? Like a million or something? 1.8 million people die per day. Today is the end times for millions of people anyway. Every day is a new day where new people are going to die, but then there's going to be new people born. I don't buy into all the end time stuff because every day is the end time for somebody, and every day is also a new beginning for someone else. So, I mean, I believe in predictions. I don't believe prophecy prophecy is always exact, but there's going to be a lot of things that people can call because, people are creatures of habit. Everything there's nothing new under the sun. Everything is going to be repeated and repeated over and over. I just don't think there was another Trump. Apparently, he's like the Neo of this system. And the people in Israel are the agents. And Benjamin Netanyahu is Agent Smith of the agents. But other than that, there's never going to be anybody else going to come along and throw a monkey wrench in the entire system the way Trump has. I mean, this is insane. He's literally disintegrating the New World Order. The New World Order and the elites, if you might call them, it's all based upon the Davos group, which is a part of the World Economic Forum. Without the money being generated from the tax bases of these European nations in the United States, there is no World Economic Forum. And if there's no World Economic Forum, there's no World Health Organization. And if there's no World Health Organization, who's going to be spreading disease all over the world and then charging you for treatment and just so that they can keep reinfecting people and you keep needing them? Who's going to terrorize the world? What do you think all these measles outbreaks and all these other diseases that are spontaneously reemerging? It's all vaccine induced diseases reoccurring, but who's administering? The World Health Organization is going around these different countries and starting it back up and then charging these nations for treatments of things that they've given these people. And no one's doing nothing about it. Then you got somebody like Trump that comes in and says, you know what, it's over. That's the head of the snake. I'm cutting it off. This is amazing. This is beyond huge. The UN was pointless and it was done after the Russians beat us so bad the Russians beat all of NATO, including the US. The United States was like, if we can't beat the Russian federations, let's join them. That's why they are the first ones who have signed up for the Board of Peace. And the UN, they can't afford to stay afloat. They're done. Just like the Paris Climate Accords, all this other fake nonsense where they can scare you and steal money from you, it's over. Trump said he's tired of the American people being scammed. So am I. Now we have a lot of scamming going on domestically, but if we're this gullible in our home country, imagine how gullible we are on the world stage. Why I'm so extremely grateful that we got rid of the USAID, sending money to all these places and all these NGOs just so that they can recruit families to come over here and rob us blind. All that is over. It's America first, and its board of peace is definitely America first.
Adding that 77% of the total owed had been paid in 2025, leaving a record amount unpaid. Wow. Gutierrez said a rule in the UN is that the UN must return unspent money on particular programs to members if it could not implement a budget created a double blow in which it was expected to give back cash that does not exist. It's only that they're in debt. I cannot overstate the urgency of the situation we now face. We cannot execute budgets with uncollected funds nor return funds we never received.
Now, who's going to really understand that? People like myself understand what's happening. People like Trump. We do business. Elected officials in politics in these different countries, and including the US, they've never had a job. Most of them never have went to work. They've never owned a company. They don't understand what's happening. These people, they're going to have to give money back that doesn't exist because they've already spent it. They've already allocated it and they've already been pocketing money. Now people are going to want a refund and the money's not there because it's already been dispersed and taken. It was always a scam. Now the scam is over. This is the beautiful part of disrupting the system. It was all a scam to begin with, all of it, everything. There was never a Russian or a Muslim threat. You are afraid of the Russians and Putin and the Muslims the whole time. You should have been watching the Europeans and the Ukrainians. They're the ones pushing the gay stuff. They're the ones pushing the trans stuff. What do you think they built the camps for in Germany? Do you know who Magnum or Hirschfeld was? What do you think the books were that they were burning? See, that's that European liberal Israeli mindset, that all that poison they want to push onto your kids. That's where it came from, not from the Russians, which is why we are rejecting them. We're rejecting their culture. We're not dealing with it no more. That shit is sick and perverted. So we're done with it. And we're done with the Europeans. They're going in the wrong direction. Let them go by themselves. We're going our own separate way.
As a result, the UN is now returning millions of dollars it never actually had. Wow. It says the letter reads, just this month as part of the 2025 assessment, we were compelled to return 227 million funds we have not collected. So they didn't even get the money, but then they have to return it because of these rules. UN agencies rarely get all the money back, money that they asked for to tackle humanitarian crisis. But the past 12 months have been particularly difficult. The U.S. is the UN's largest contributor, but President Donald Trump said it was not fulfilling its great potential and has criticized it for failing to support U.S.-led peace efforts, which is with the Board of Peace. And wow. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just realizing this in real time. And this just broke. I mean, for him to put this out publicly, do you understand how serious this actually is? I think this is a huge turn of events that we have never seen with the UN in this position with another organization, the Board of Peace, that will take over. Okay, so it says the U.S. did not pay its contribution to the UN's regular budget in 2025 and offered only 30% of its expected funding to UN peacekeeping operations. Then in January, Trump withdrew it from dozens of international organizations, including 31 UN agencies, to end American taxpayer funding and involvement in entities that advance globalist agendas over U.S. priorities.
I'm so proud of our president. He's literally stopping all the scamming of American taxpayer money. You know what this means? This means we were getting taxed way too much. We have way too much tax money if we're giving it out to everybody around the world. way too much tax money. We're doing way too much spending. We shouldn't even have that kind of money. This is insane. But he's literally stopping even the money that was going to us being on these pointless UN groups, that because they were all just set up, and then they put a budget. They just like the USAID, they send you an invoice, the Americans just pay it. No questions asked. The problem is with all this scamming, it didn't benefit Americans. It always benefited foreigners. I'll be honest. If you ask Trump, he would be like, you know what? I probably feel better about it if you told me a bunch of Americans and American communities were just getting rich off of doing slick stuff to the government. That would make more sense. But instead, we have other countries that are giving American tax dollars to Chinese builders that are creating their infrastructure while ours is falling apart. That is complete bullshit. And I'm done with it. America first, America only. That's why I keep saying that. America first means Americans first. When they send this money, when they're scamming all that Somalian money, billions, trillions, and they take it to Somalia, they're not doing the work themselves. They wear sandals. They don't have boots. They got to go through the Chinese. The Chinese have equipment and they actually build. So they're giving our money to the Chinese and they're building up Africa. But yet it's our money being spent, but we have no say so. We're being scammed. That's over under Trump. And we got to start figuring out who's going to replace Trump when Trump's not in office. We're going to need to keep this going. This is insane, but I'm really appreciating how Melanie is breaking this down. So this is really good. Follow her channel too, Melanie King. Substantially more subscribers than me, but I'm new. I'm building myself up. Oh, by the way, like my channel, subscribe, share the video. This pushed me into the algorithm. We're on our road to 100,000 subscribers. So thank you guys for pretty much tuning in and sharing the video.
Oh my gosh. I'm just want to skip through some of this. It says Gutierrez had warned earlier that same month that the UN faced its most fragile financial position in years, again citing unpaid fees, having said in October that it faced a race to bankruptcy. Wow. All right, let me show you this next thing.
Yeah, if your organization requires the United States taxpayers to pay for it, for you not to be bankrupt, then you're gonna have to go bankrupt. I said, bro, there's a business down the street from me. It was a really famous local restaurant. They just got hit by ICE today. It's not Zips. Another one in Scottsdale got hit. And I made a post. I said, listen, if our favorite restaurants require slave labor from foreigners to stay open, then let them all close. The beautiful thing is another restaurant's going to come in and they're going to hire American people and they're going to occupy that same building that closed. And that's the beauty of capitalism. We will replace these other companies that are just refusing to hire Americans. They can also get fired. So the way we're stopping the scam there, we're stopping it everywhere. The same thing Trump is doing, we as Americans have to repeat the same thing in our communities, on the streets, individually. But we have to know how to have these conversations. That's why it's healthy to get on here and talk to people, listen, learn. Turn off your TV. There's nothing worthwhile on Fox or CNN. It's all, or CBNC, DNC, all that trash is over. Get on here, talk to people like myself, like Melanie. Listen to what we're saying about politics. And we're actually reading the articles and we're disseminating it and we're showing you how it's in your best interest to do this because it's in the interest of the Americans. You got to stop looking at yourself from a global lens. You're an American. You're never going to live in another country. You're only going to speak English the rest of your life. You need to just focus on the United States and your own bottom line. You got to screw off worrying about everybody else because they're inconsequential. You're living your life and your American experience is what has to be the priority.
Now, Trump has made a lot of statements about the Board of Peace and the UN, but this is what he said recently.
We just created the Board of Peace, which I think is going to be amazing. I wish the United Nations could do more. I wish we didn't need a Board of Peace, but the United Nations, and with all the wars I settled, the United Nations never helped me on one war.
They're pointless. And that was the whole purpose behind the UN, was to mitigate wars. but yet there's been a war every year. And they should have been. And the fact is, the United Nations should have literally protested and made sure he was given the Peace Prize, because no other man in history has created this much peace around the world. No other man in any religion or anything, nobody else has made as much peace as Trump. So but you got to think, but that's why it just exposes how they are against peace. They need death. They need anxiety amongst their public because they need your money. They need to be able to scam you, and they need you to happily give the money over because you think you need protection. These people can't protect you. The British can't protect their people. The French can't protect their people. The only ones that can protect their people are the Americans. Everyone else depends on us. All those Eastern European bloc nations that should be a part of Russia still, those countries are all fake. There's no, what is Estonia? What's their GDP? What do they export? Nothing. There's just a staging ground for this fake invasion of Russia we were planning on doing. That's never going to happen. That's off the table now. These countries are not going to be able to survive without USAID money. So guess what? They're not going to be able to survive. They're going to have to go crawl back to the Federation, become a part of their economy, and then learn to work with their neighbors. The years of the Americans subsidizing their economies so that we can surround the Russians and then we can keep taking tax money, pretending the Russians are surrounding us when we're surrounding them. That's bullshit. It's over. It's over. You can't keep secrets with a man like Trump. He's going to tell you everything. It's done. Get used to it.
I mean, I guess I'm not blaming them. I didn't call them to help, but I got, the presidents and prime ministers together. We knocked heads. We got along. They liked me. I liked them. Every single one of them nominated me for a Nobel Prize. Every one of the wars, among many other people, nominated me for a Nobel Prize.
Do you want your board of peace to replace the UN?
Well, it might. I mean, the UN just hasn't been very helpful. I'm a big fan of the UN potential, but it has never lived up to its potential. The UN should have settled every one of the wars that I settled.
I'll be honest. When I'm building businesses or doing something, I look for another company that I would compete with, and I just make sure I have a superior product. If I have a superior product, then it's not even really competition. It seems like we're similar, but I'm offering something better. And don't get me wrong. If they were there first, then they're, first in, best dressed. But if you're offering a superior product, people are going to gravitate to you. Trump is offering a better version of the UN. The only reason people even know about the UN is because historically it's always been there, but it's been worthless the whole time. This is how you change the world. And we're living through history as I speak.
I never went to them. I never even thought to go to them. They should be able to settle those wars. They don't. I believe you got to let the UN continue because
now Trump does not want the UN to continue, and now that some countries have rejected him, a lot of European countries, because of the UN, that was when you start to hear how weak they are, they're not effective, they're not doing a good job, and he wished there wasn't a need for the Board of Peace, but if the UN was doing its job. But he's just talking nice. That is the goal. I believe we are going to see the UN collapse, or Donald Trump is going to make an offer to bail them out if these countries join his Board of Peace, or he supersedes the UN. Some type of thing is going to happen to completely disable, handicap the UN. But
that's what Trump does. That's his MO. It's a big ask. He'll put you in a position where you're going to have to come back to him. Just like what he did with the negotiations the other day with Greenland. He said, we might take it by force. And then people begged him not to do that. And he said, okay, then make a deal with me. And all the terms they were saying no to at first sounded way better after you realize that American boot was going to be in your ass and then down your throat in the same day. No rinsing at anything. So the same thing's going to happen now. We're going to pull all the funding from the UN. It's going to be insolvent. It's going to be on the verge of collapse. And then Trump's going to say, look, this is what I'll do. I'll absorb the nations and you guys are going to have to sign a new charter. Basically the Americans have been paying for everything anyway. You might as well just get on board where it's going to be American ran and you guys will just, take orders from the top down. You guys will all kind of be states of the United States. it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of prophetic with the whole one world government thing, but at least it'll be our government, no, not some crazy German, Austrian gay guy named Schwab telling us about how we're going to just basically kill everybody off so that we can have an empty world ran by robots. Yeah, to hell with that idea too. That's why we don't like the World Economic Forum. I appreciate what Trump is doing. This is amazing. You guys got to share these videos. You got to keep tuned in. I will keep you up to date. I promise. I will be back on shortly with another topic in about 20 minutes. This is great news, but remember, it's America first and America only.
I've been needing to find a new apartment, which has not been easy with credit as bad as mine. Luckily, let me get my dream apartment for me and my dog. I just paid a small fee and was able to move in fast. Get the cosigner you need for the apartment you want. Check out cosigning.com.